Well, hello and good morning. Hope you had a good weekend. I'll get class started here. Perhaps as you can see in the chat here, I have maybe you want to share a highlight for the weekend. It would be great to have you share a highlight for the weekend. I think over this past weekend, I mean, it was fairly decent. I would say my highlight would have been watching the latest Mandalorian episode. Whenever there's a Star Wars related show on or have an opportunity to watch a Star Wars show, I'm going to get sucked into it no matter what. My wife sometimes likes to comment, how many times can you watch the same Star Wars show? And I'm like, as many times possible. Sometimes I do learn something new. But it would be great if you could share like a highlight for the weekend, whether it was just simply going for a walk or doing some yard work or maybe buying something, whatever it might be. But definitely it would be great if you could participate and just either verbalize or jot down something in the chat. Would be great. Can be school related, can be not school related.
I got a Christmas tree.
You got a Christmas tree. Okay.
Yeah.
You cut it?
No, we just got one.
Okay. Real or fake?
Real.
All right. Okay. I actually growing up had allergies, and I think I grew out of them, but allergies to evergreen trees. So we would have in the house for a number of years the artificial, but then as I got older, I think my allergies started getting under control, and we started going in that direction of getting some real trees. So that's cool. All right, that's good. All right, some people may have worked a lot over the weekend. Hopefully you took some time to yourself or for family just to kind of relax and debrief a little bit here. So we are near the end of the trimester, and we want to finish strong here. And so I know there are some that need a few things to turn in still, and please do. Door is always open, so let's get those things done. And if you're struggling with them, please reach out to me. That would be great. I would love to talk to you about them and see what we can come up with. All right. But let's just finish this trimester strong, and we have one more assignment here to enter into the books, and that is the impacts of Reconstruction. Before we get to that, I do, like I have in the past, I want to start off with a little video clip here. So I'm going to share this. And last week, we had a video clip on William Du Bois and the idea of self-help. And so now today we're going to have a video clip here on Booker T. Washington. So let me share this.
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think I'm on mute. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
It says not a success. All right, super. And usually what I'll do is I'll put my mic on mute because I think the sound comes through better, and then I'll unmute myself. This one's going to first start off with a little Frederick Douglass and the World's Fair of 1893. And so some people may have highlighted that in your impacts of Reconstruction. But then we also did that during the Frederick Douglass speech activity. And then it's going to segue into Booker T. Washington. Perhaps maybe think of some takeaways, and then perhaps maybe if we can think of some individuals in the 20th century who could in some ways represent some of these early leaders in the 19th century here. All right, so.
Frederick Douglass was asked to be the primary speaker. And at first, he didn't want to do it. But then he decided, yes, he would.
There is no Negro problem. The problem is whether the American people have loyalty enough, honor enough, patriotism enough to live up to their own Constitution. We Negroes love our country. We fought for it. We ask only that we be treated as well as those who fought against it.
Silver-tongued Lion delivered one of his strongest indictments. And as fate would have it, it would be one of his last major speeches. On February 20th, 1895, Frederick Douglass died in Washington, D.C., at the age of 77. Douglass's death closed a major chapter in the history of our people and begged the question, who would step forward and lead?
Booker T. Washington's great American story. He hears that there is a school in Hampton, Virginia, walked all the way across the state of Virginia on his own as a young boy. He shows up in this school and says, I want to come to your school.
Booker T. Washington becomes the principal and leader of Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama, situated in the Lion's Mouth. He enters this space to build a school for African Americans and creates it into something that no one ever saw before.
He thought that it was best for African Americans, especially from the South, to gain an industrial education, to be able to master core skills that they could then put to use, and ideally translate that into land ownership, business ownership, into the field of teaching, and build up institutions of their own.
He had the ear of leading white Northern philanthropists. Washington gave them a very palatable formula to follow. Give me your money, and I will build schools that will produce some teachers, but also the people to do the work that you think these people should be doing.
Two years after Frederick Douglass denounced the savagery of lynching, Booker T. Washington, at the Atlanta Cotton Exposition, gave what would become his most famous address. It signaled a profound change of course.
To those of my race who depend on bettering their condition, our greatest danger is that in the great leap from slavery to freedom, we may overlook the fact that the masses of us are to live by productions of our hands, and fail to keep in mind that we shall prosper in proportion as we learn to dignify and glorify common labor and put brains and skill into the common occupations of life.
Washington declared that black men had sought political power too prematurely during Reconstruction, that they would be better off dedicating their lives to aspiring to own their own farms than dreaming about election to the halls of Congress.
Washington suggests that if African Americans build a life of economic independence in the South, this can be a basis for future political and legal equality.
He's talking about Black people owning businesses, acquiring land, and becoming independent farmers. He's talking about self-help.
He was also a master of dissemblance, of telling white people what they wanted to hear, but sometimes doing something opposite behind the scenes, supporting cases against discrimination, doing things that, if they were made public, would certainly get him in trouble in the eyes of many of his white supporters.
Washington can look like a traitor to Reconstruction and a defender of it, because he forces us to evaluate how we think about the relationship between politics and economic independence. For that reason, he can look like both the most conservative and at times the most radical leader in a turn-of-the-century South.
As Booker T. Washington
Okay, so with that little clip there, anyone got like any first initial reactions or thoughts to Booker T. Washington and anything that was mentioned in this little clip? Okay, I'm gonna take a chance here on this Monday, and can we think of, or what is the big difference between Booker T. Washington and William Du Bois's approach? Both of them talk about self-help. Either verbalize it or you can put it in the chat. Okay, we got some silence here. Tough one on a Monday. We'll get there. You know, both of them, Du Bois and Washington, are talking about self-help, but their approaches are a lot different. Du Bois, remember, is looking politically and using the political process, and in some ways, you know, you're looking at here we are U.S. citizens, and these are the rights that go along with being a U.S. citizen, and really hitting that message home in order to get realistically at the table like every other American citizen is at, and that means political, economic, and social equality here. All right. And so I see here in our chat, Booker T. Washington wouldn't always mean what he said and wouldn't do what he's suggesting to keep white support. And so I say, you know, you are hitting on maybe the contradictions with Booker T. Washington. If anything, towards self-help and towards gaining of more rights, he's a more gradual approach to it. Over time, it shall happen. And so that's where we sometimes, you know, we look at him as more of a conservative approach, and he is going to get some scorn and ridicule from people like Du Bois at the time, because they are contemporaries of each other. And then his thought was through your hands, through your skill, labor, and all that stuff, and showing your worth, that you cannot deny the social and the political equality, but that's going to occur over time. And so people like William Du Bois is like, you know, how much time is needed here? And that also speaks to when we look at the activity that you're working on, speaks to this idea that, when is enough enough? Okay, and so you got to think about that. How much time has to go by before you get the same thing, or you get the same rights? And so when you look at these two individuals, Du Bois and Washington, they do have different approaches. And so we look at people in the 20th century with different approaches to civil rights and to equality. You have to look at people like Martin Luther King Jr. perhaps, and Malcolm X. Not that Washington fits in those categories, because he may not fit in those categories. Du Bois is part of the Talented 10, which is a very socially progressive, liberal group. And then you have Washington, who is part of a conservative group of African-American leaders. And so their methods and their approaches are going to be a lot different. And I think that's a good point was brought up in the chat here about accepting discrimination or accepting the social order, if you want to say, and that's Washington. And that is why one would say in the South, they could tolerate a message of Washington, because it wasn't going to disrupt the system as much as perhaps someone like a Du Bois or a Frederick Douglass and what he is saying, what they are saying. All right. Anyone else have any final thoughts on that little clip there? Now, there are going to be a lot more other individuals out there, like Marcus Garvey. I did not bring him in, and maybe tomorrow I'll bring Marcus Garvey in, or even Ida Tarbell. And Ida Tarbell is going to be an advocate for civil rights as well as women's suffrage, but she really highlights the anti-lynching campaigns and the use of the press and imagery to hit that message home that we need a stronger anti-lynching legislation, which we really don't have on the books, even to this day here. So with that, last thing I want to share here, and so let me share my screen. Is again, we are focusing on this last assignment here, the impacts of Reconstruction, and you are addressing these seven or eight topics here, and or questions, and you're using these individuals and groups here to help answer these particular questions. Okay, and it's a create your own activity, and I sent out in the update again what I meant by the CYOA. And last week I also on Friday had talked a little bit about that as well, and a few of the assignments, finished assignments, have been coming in. This is due Wednesday, November 25th. And yes, tomorrow is the end of the trimester, but Ms. Ida and I are giving you the day here to an additional day here to finish this up. So we're giving you a little bit more leeway here to get it done. Do we have any questions about this assignment, impacts of Reconstruction? You put it in the chat, or you can just verbalize it if you have a question. Okay. Silence means I'm going to interpret it as you kind of, you understand what the expectations are with this. And so final thought here is you want to make sure you do turn this in because it is a summative piece. So let's get something turned in here. Deadline for missing work, again, is Wednesday as well. So Wednesday's kind of like that day to get it all in. Doesn't mean you have to wait for the last minute, the 11th hour to get it done. You can get it done sooner. That'd be great. Please always reach out, check in with me. That'd be fantastic. Attend my office hours. That'd be great. Or send me an email. Just please reach out. Let me know if there's any questions or concerns. If you feel a little overworked, overburdened, please again reach out. Let me know. We can always work something out. So with that, I wish you a good day and take care.